Alright, Divine Set 9 stuff is starting to be revealed with the first ride line of Nebula Knights. So let's begin. So first off, here's the starter that you must run. Nebula Knight of Inheritance Sirius, and Sirius is going to be the ride line. In which we go to the grade 1 wiki power, Nebula Knight of Gilding Sirius. So the skill is, when rode on top of the grade 0, reveal a grade 3 Nebula Knight from your ride deck, search your deck for one Nebula Knight of Yearning Cornelius, and call it to rearguard. Yes, this is going to have a companion rearguard, which is going to evolve all the way to a grade 3. So this is basically just typical setup, but what's really nice is that since the partner rearguard is going to be a grade 1 as well, this is going to be 2 attacks in your first grade 1 ride. And spoiler alert, the deck is better off going second. In which we continue off to the grade 2 with 10k power, Nebula Knight of Glory Sirius. So auto when rode upon by a grade 3 Sirius, cost Soul Blast 1, look at top 7 cards for your deck for 1 Nebula Knight and put it to your hand. And of course shuffle your deck. Once again, ride line just sets you up with the second skill that might be useful sometimes since it is still Nebula Knight, where auto, when this unit intercepts, and if your Nebula Knight is being attacked, shield plus 5k. So basically it's a 10k intercept for Nebula Knights. You might still run this in your main deck for now just because of Nebula Knight reasons, but in the future this is probably going to be out. But you mainly use this for, of course, the ride line. And then we go to the grade 3 with your thinking power, Glistening Nebula Knight Lord Sirius. So the first skill is Act Vanguard. Once per turn, cost return 2 Nebula Knights from your drop zone to the bottom of the deck, and then choose one of your rear guards, and then superior call 1 Nebula Knight from your deck that is 1 grade higher than that unit on top of its rearguard circle. Yes, you're calling on top of that rearguard unit. And of course, shuffle your deck. Like I explained earlier, you're basically going to be evolving your main companion rearguard from 1 and then evolving it to grade 3. So think of it as you're going to be riding on a rearguard. So the cost of having 2 cards put to the bottom of the deck that are Nebula Knight Lords isn't going to be hard. And then the second skill, Auto Vanguard, when this card attacks, cost Counterblast 1, choose a column and then stand all your Nebula Knights in that column, basically giving you 4th attack with a booster. And then if you Persona Ride during the turn, you can cost discard a trigger, and then look at the top cards of your deck equal to the amount of Nebula Knight's rear guards, and stack them on the top in any order. Yep, basically on Persona Ride turn, not only you get a 4th attack restanding rear guard, you also get to choice drive check your stuff, which is going to be the other part of its playstyle because you want to put those triggers on the top cards of your deck. Overall, it's a pretty cool idea. It sets you up. You basically have a rear guard riding mechanic here, which will be gone over with the rear guard companion. But not only that, it's a 4 attack deck by default and also trigger stacking, which is always pretty nice. Although not as great as many other decks, this is actually not too bad so far, especially for budget options. And now we're going to go on to the companion rearguard, starting off with the youngest version, Nebula Knight of Yearning Cornelius, which has the skill Auto Rearguard when this card boosts at least a grade 3 Nebula Knight plus 2k into the end of battle, and then cost discard card from your hand to reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a trigger, choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards that is in the same column as the unit and retire it, and then put the revealed card to the top or bottom. Considering that the grade 3 can easily stack your deck, this is going to be an issue when it's going to be a trigger to the top usually, but I don't like the part where it's the same column retire, but luckily you do have a grade 3 version of itself on rearguard, so it isn't entirely too bad, especially since you can choose where to call. But you must run this as a starting point, in which we go to the Nebula Knight of Piercing End Cornelius, which is of course the grade 2 with 10k power, and the skill is auto when placed on rearguard on top of a grade 1 Cornelius. If your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 2, cost Counterblast 1, search your deck for 1 grade 3 Cornelius and call it to rearguard on top of this unit, and of course shuffle your deck. Basic idea here is that you place this on top of the grade 1, the grade 2 will call the grade 3 on top of it, which will become the grade 3 basically, so it's like riding on rearguard. And the nice part is that it says your opponent at least being grade 2, meaning that if you went second, you can basically call a grade 3 on your grade 2 turn. Hence why I said that going second might be better for this deck. In which the third skill is Count Rearguard if your Vanguard's Nebula Knight cannot be retired by your opponent's card abilities. This is not going to be too relevant since you're just going to call on top of this anyway from the first skill, but you mainly use it for consistency for the grade 3. In which we go to the grade 3 form with 13k power, Nebula Knight of Heroism Cornelius, which has the skill Auto. When placed on rearguard on top of the grade 2 Cornelius, choose up to 1 grade 1 Cornelius from your drop zone and call it to the back row rearguard. And if your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, cost Soul Blast 1, look at top 2 cards of your deck, choose one from among them, put to your hand, and then the other to the top or bottom. So like I said, this card can be called on your grade 2 turn, but the extra bonus skill needs you to be at grade 3. And the Soul Blasting is fine since that's just putting more Nebula Knights in the drop zone, and the part where you're just adding a card to your hand and then stacking the top is also pretty nice as well. In which the second skill is that auto rearguard when this card attacks if your Vanguard's Nebula Knight plus 5k, very nice 18k beater. In which the final skill is auto rearguard at the end of your turn, choose a grade 2 or less Nebula Knight from your drop zone and call it to rearguard on the same circle as this unit as rests. So basically at the end of the turn, since the grade 2 is going to become the grade 3 at the end of the turn becomes back the grade 2, or grade 1 depending on scenario, which in a way is going to lead to more Nebula Knights in the drop zone, which can be recycled back again, and then evolving it further back again by grading up from your deck. I do say pretty cool concept, especially since it does feel similar to Jewel Knights where you just call on top of each other, but overall not too crazy right now. But I do like the part that it could stack. And on to more support, we start off with Nebula Knight of Accompanying Illusion Formulute, which is a grade 1 with power, and this goes auto when discarded from hand during your turn. If your Vanguard is a Nebula Knight, you can call this to rearguard, and if you call, this card cannot attack during the turn, but it can still boost of course. First off, the deck doesn't really discard a lot, but it is just a nice option for you to have. But anyway, second skill, act rearguard. If your Vanguard is a Nebula Knight, put this to soul, like a top card deck, and put it to the top or bottom. More stacking, which is always very helpful, especially since you do want to be stacking trigger units of course. Overall, it's a nice addition to have, especially since it's another Nebula Knight that can also help out with soul a bit. And then finally, the last Nebula Knight for the set is Nebula Knight of Equestrian Archery, Hajina, which is a grade 2 with 10 power and the skills. Count rearguard during your turn. If your rearguard was either retired or put to soul during the main phase, that even counts on placed on top. This unit gets us 5k power, and your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3 plus 10k. Considering that you have a little bit of the Jewel Knight part where you're placed on top of each other, this is guaranteed to happen. But the second skill is auto rearguard. Once per turn, when this unit attacks while being boosted by a unit that is Nebula Knight, cost Soul Blast 1, discard a card from your hand, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a trigger unit, choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards and bind it. And if it's not, choose one of your opponent's back row rearguards and bind it. And then put the revealed card to the top or bottom. So this card is just pretty nice for just some additional removal, but the thing I don't like is that you have to choose a front row unit first, and if you're unable to, then you can choose a back row unit instead of just choosing anywhere. But it is a nice backup option for you to call just in case you cannot call Cornelius, and being a big beater on its own is also pretty nice. So this is just a must run for the deck. And finally, once again, another Youthquake deck that has a Youthquake promo, which is the Nebula Knight's Path from the Starry Sea, which is a grade 3 normal order and it has no condition, but you can also play it from drop. So the skill is bind this card and then perform one of the following. Look at top starting cards from your deck to choose up to one card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard and call it to rearguard and floor shuffle your deck. Or the second part where if your Vanguard is at least Nebula Knight, counter blast 1, look at top 3 cards of your deck to choose one card to put to hand, the other one put to the top of your deck, and then put the other to the drop. And your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, choose 2 of your rearguards and it gets with 5k power into the end turn. Very helpful because Nebula Knights itself doesn't really get power on its own, and just another card to help you basically set up, which is also very nice. It's just too bad that this is just another promo that you probably should run for the deck. Luckily, it's not the most important promo since a lot of the support already helps you out with most of its stuff, but it's nice to have regardless. And finally, here's the secret rare, and next week we're finally getting Daikaiser, which is actually pretty fast. And so that's it for these reviews of the new Nebula Knight ride line. What do you guys think of it? Overall, they are pretty interesting in concept, especially since it kind of brings back the Jewel Knight playstyle of basically calling on top of each other, but on a very specific rearguard. And I kind of like the rearguard riding mechanic as well. It's kind of a little bit of an interesting take, even though we kind of had that with Trickstar before. But I also like the little bit of an added twist where you're basically manipulating your top cards of your deck, which could even be your drive checks, while also at the same time used for basically extra bonuses. But in that, I just have to say the deck isn't super crazy, but it does have some interesting features. And now it's time to say goodbye.